All right, so welcome everyone. Bill Hammond here. Today we're going to talk about a real interesting topic. I'm going to talk about what everyone ought to know about paying for the cost of long-term care. Now, you have all known me long enough to know that there's certain ways to pay for the cost of care. You are all aware of those. And so I'm going to spend just a couple minutes on those later on in this Google Hangout. But I want to spend some time on a very interesting way to pay for the cost of care that you probably aren't familiar with. And I know it's summertime. I know we're all busy. And I know it's hard to get over here to the office, so that's why we decided to just go ahead and do a Google Hangout on this. And I also am going to try to keep this one fairly short because I know you've got lots to do. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll dive right in and let's go ahead and begin, and we'll talk about what everyone ought to know about paying for the cost of long-term care. So, all right, there we go. Technical difficulties. So, why are so many people concerned? Well, we all know life expectancies continue to increase. If you've been paying any attention at all, you know that the government has been making cuts to the cost of Medicare and Medicaid, and of course, we as a society, we're aging. The baby boomers are aging. By some estimates, between 8,000 to 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 each and every day. And of course, the greatest generation is aging. And so, all of these things, it's kind of a perfect storm as to why the cost of care is such a concern to all of us. And then when you couple that with the fact that families are spread out across the country, it's difficult caring for a loved one who needs help. And frankly, the kids can't always care for you. And then what I hear from my clients over and over again is, well, we really don't want them to. It's not that they don't love their children, they don't want to be a burden. And so society has changed. The greatest threat to the financial security of middle class and upper class Americans, therefore, is the cost of long-term care. Now, who's going to pay if you do need care? Well, will Medicare pay? Sometimes, if you've had a 3-day hospital stay. Medicare will pay for rehab while you're quote-unquote improving. Medicaid will sometimes pay. Talk about that in a few minutes. Your Medicare supplement, is that going to pay? No, not going to pay unless Medicare is paying, and then sometimes the supplement will pay for a little while. The VA, sometimes the VA helps pay for the cost of care. But your primary insurance, Blue Cross, AARP, those types of things, probably not, or not much. And of course, then it comes down oftentimes to you and or your family. So there's a lack of understanding. People falsely assume that Medicare or Medicaid is just going to cover the cost of their long-term care, but we know that's frequently not true. And many people spend their life savings on long-term care in a year or less, and that's not surprising when you think of the fact that in our area, cost of assisted living care, they're all over the board, but anywhere from $4,500 to $5,500, $6,000 a month, nursing homes $6,000 to $7,500 a month, some more, some less. What we can all agree on is we have great big issues when we're trying to pay for the cost of care. All right, so let's jump ahead. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the baby boomers are turning age 65 every single day. 70% of them will need some form of long-term care, and 40% of those in a nursing home. And yet, a really interesting statistic that probably a lot of you have never heard of or not thought of, and that is that 88% of life insurance policies will never pay a death benefit. They'll either lapse, which means they go away, premiums stop being paid, or the insured surrenders the policy. They figure they can't afford it. And so 38% of people who apply for Medicaid own a life insurance policy that will count against them. Why is that? Well, because for Medicaid purposes, more than $1,500 cash value in a life insurance policy The state says, Kansas or Missouri says, well, that's just the same as if you had that money in a savings account. So how do you pay for the cost of care? Well, one way is private pay. And if you were wise enough to buy long-term care insurance, that can be a great way to go. And sometimes the government programs, Medicaid, VA, but for some people, there's a better way. And this is that surprising way that we talked about when we sent out the invitation to this Google Hangout. Some of you may actually have a life insurance policy that can help pay for long-term care expenses. Now, notice, I'm not talking about a long-term care insurance policy. That's separate. That's great. If you can afford it, if you're healthy enough to get it, you should have long-term care insurance. I do. It's a good thing to have, but lots of times people come into my office and they simply can no longer qualify, and they think that, long-term care insurance ship has left the harbor. Well, interestingly, there sometimes are ways to use life insurance. So right now, options are limited to access the value in a policy. So what if you have a life insurance policy, but you can't afford the premiums? Well, in that case, you stop paying the premiums, and then you lapse or abandon the policy. Or what if you've got a policy and you need to qualify for Medicaid? Well, then lots of times you have to turn in the policy, cash it in, borrow the money out to get it down below the Medicaid limitations. Well, for some people, there's a better solution. And so let's go ahead and let's consider the case of Catherine and Beth, and I'm going to show you a short video that I think you'll find really interesting because it really does a great job of explaining this surprising option. So let's go ahead and look at the case of Catherine and Beth.
Meet Catherine. She's getting older and needs more care than her family can provide. Her daughter Beth realizes Mom needs professional senior care now. It's a tough decision, made tougher trying to figure out how to pay for the cost of senior care. Then, Beth remembers something she heard about converting life insurance into funds to pay for senior care while someone's still alive. This is exactly what her mother needs, since Catherine has a life insurance policy with premiums that are getting very costly. Beth does some research and finds valuable information about using a life insurance to pay for senior care. She learns that an existing life insurance policy can be converted into a long-term care benefit plan with monthly payments to cover the costs of senior care, whether that's home care, an assisted living community, a nursing home, or even Alzheimer's care or a hospice. And any type of life insurance could qualify. Universal or term policies with absolutely no cash value could still have a hidden value as immediate payments for senior care. And to think her mother was going to throw away her life insurance policy because she couldn't keep making the payments. Now, Catherine may be able to preserve her home and savings and spare her family the strain and guilt of funding her care. Beth's happy to learn there are no costs or fees involved and no obligation once the policy is valued. If Mom qualifies and enrolls, the monthly benefit payments start immediately with no more life insurance premiums to pay ever again. But Catherine's a little skeptical. What about money when I die? How will you pay for my funeral? She asks. It says right here, says Beth, reading, the benefit plan reserves a portion of your account to help cover funeral expenses, and should you die before the entire account has been spent, any remaining balance will be paid to your family. Catherine's relieved she won't be a financial burden on her family, and Beth is happy she's found a way to get Mom the care she needs. They both finally feel in control of Catherine's care. The life insurance premiums Catherine's paid consistently for so many years will finally pay off now when she really needs it. Political leaders and advocacy groups across the country are endorsing this form of private pay for senior care. And it's an accepted form of payment by every home care, assisted living, and nursing home company in the United States. Convert your policy into a long-term care benefit and choose the form of care you want. Before you abandon your life insurance policy, you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your family to see if you qualify.
All right. So Catherine and Beth, they took action. They took a policy that had become too expensive, and they turned it into a long-term care benefit plan to help cover the costs of mom's long-term care. So, can you convert the death benefit of a life insurance policy that one of your clients has into cash to pay for their care? Well, sometimes. And that's what's really cool about it. There's no cost or obligation to find out, and it's a really simple application and approval process. It takes anywhere from, oh, I don't know, 30 to 60 days. And what's amazing, all types of in-force life insurance can qualify, and there's no age restrictions. I'll give you an example. Had a client, they had bought what we call a 20-year term policy. And what that means is it means that policy was going to have level premiums for the next 20 years. And they were paying about $1,200 a year. So $1,200 per year. And then about 18 years into the 20-year term, he became sick. I sat down with the family and we talked about converting the policy, and found out that if they didn't take any steps on the 20th policy anniversary, the cost of that care, the policy I should say, was going to go up from $1,200 a year to over $21,000 a year. $1,200 to $21,000 for $150,000 worth of coverage. Who could afford that? No one. In fact, it wouldn't even be a smart decision, I don't think, to continue to pay that unless he was incredibly sick. And so that's an example of, we were able to find, take a term policy that was soon going to go away and actually find long-term care benefit that was going to be able to be used for his care. Pretty amazing. There's also no medical underwriting required. There's a phone interview, and then what happens is there's no more premium payments for the person who owned the policy. And the way it works is, if you qualify, if the policy qualifies, then the company buys the policy and puts money into a care account in the name of the insured. And then the money can be paid to the place where care is being provided, and the benefit can be adjusted to match the changing care needs. So whether that's starting out with someone at home and needing help paying an in-home caregiver, to them going to an assisted living or a nursing home or even modifying the home, any of those payments could be made out of the care account. And as the as the needs change, the amount of the payment can also change. And then there's also a final expense funeral benefit. So the account balance, anything left, is paid to the beneficiaries at the time of death. And then there's also a final expense funeral benefit to help pay for the cost of the funeral. So, quick example, case history. Mr. and Mrs. Knight, they live at home. They've got assets of $100,000. They've got Social Security of $2,100 a month, but now they've got $4,100 a month in expenses between the home health care costs, the medication, the health insurance, and at the end of every single month, they look at this and they say, well, we're spending $2,000 per month in our principal. Well, interestingly, Mr. Knight had a policy valued at $115,000, but it had no cash value, just a term policy. And they were able to get a long-term care benefit of $48,000. And what that means is, it means it was going to pay $2,000 per month or more if needed. And so that was going to allow Mr. and Mrs. Knight to pay the shortfall while they stayed at home for the next 2 years without even tapping into their savings. So that's a great example of how benefit could be taken out of a policy that otherwise was just going to go away, and it allows them to stay home longer. Another example, case history, John Jones. John's got Social Security and pension of $2,300 a month, but he's in an assisted living. Cost of care at the assisted living is $4,800 a month, and that means that he's short $2,500 per month. He's got $100,000 in assets, and if he's short $2,500 a month, it's all going to be gone in 40 months. And at that point, he's probably going to have to move to a nursing home. But he had a term policy, $250,000 term, no cash value, and he was able to turn that into a long-term care benefit of $107,500, which means that this was going to be enough to pay his shortfall for the next 43 months. Could stay home or stay in the facility in the assisted living for an extra 3.5 years, just by taking that dormant asset and turning it into a long-term care benefit. Now, you're probably starting to realize that this can be a great way to help pay for the cost of care, but when should you not use this? Well, if you've got a policy that has what we call an accelerated death benefit. Some policies have that, and that means that depending upon what's going on from a health perspective, you might actually be able to get a portion of that money from your policy right now. So you should check into that. We'd always want to check into it. Or the other time when you should not do this is if your loved one had a very short life expectancy and they didn't have immediate need for the funds. In those cases, wouldn't make sense to do it. Otherwise, going to make a whole lot of sense, and you want to at least investigate it and check into it and see whether or not it makes sense to go ahead and do this. So if you have a life insurance policy with a death benefit of at least $50,000, then you can get a free, no obligation policy valuation to discover how much you might be entitled to from your existing policy. So, unfortunately, not everyone has a life insurance policy, and in those cases, then we're going to go ahead and look at some of the other types of things that we sometimes do. But I did want to go ahead and let you know that if you have a life insurance policy that's got at least $50,000 in it, or if you've got one of your clients has this, rather than sit around and say, boy, there's, we can't afford to bring in-home caregivers, or we don't have enough money to pay for the cost of the assisted living or whatnot. You want to start asking them if they have a life insurance policy that's got at least $50,000 death benefit, because if they do, we may be able to turn that into a significant amount of money which can go into a care account and be used to pay to bring people into their home, or to help pay the cost of an independent living or an assisted living. And so this is something that, as people in the healthcare community, it's not well known. But I wanted to bring this message to you because, like I said, it can be done for any type of policy. The good news is, if someone applies, then what happens is then the applicant is underwritten for what we call mortality, which is life expectancy, and morbidity, what's going on from a health perspective. And then ultimately the company will come back, and the company then will make a bid, will make an offer on the policy. If they make an offer, then if your client or my client decides to accept the offer, then the money will be put into a separate healthcare account in the name of our clients, and then be used for the cost of their care. If they pass away and there's still money in the account, whatever's left is going to go on down to their beneficiaries. There's also going to be a death benefit so that it can help pay for the cost of their funeral. And so this is something that is frankly just not known. And yet we've seen some amazing situations where we've been able to help people stay at home or in an independent living or an assisted living without even digging into their savings, or in some cases where they don't have savings, as a bridge to allow them to stay there. So I wanted to have this short Google Hangout and bring this all to you because this is something you need to know about. And if you have a situation where you've got someone who's got a life insurance policy and you want it looked at, then contact us. Give us a call at the Elder and Disability Law Firm, 913-338-5713. So go ahead and call the firm and tell us that you've got a client who's got a policy that we ought to look at, or feel free to email me, whammond@kcelderlaw.com. That's WHAMMOND @kcelderlaw.com. So it's a gorgeous day here in Kansas City. Class is over. I want to thank you for spending a few minutes today with me on this Google Hangout. And if you've got any questions, again, give a call, 913-338-5713, or shoot me an email, whammond@kcelderlaw.com. And we look forward, as always, to helping you and your clients. Thanks so much. Have a great day.